Welcome back to the Sports Lab podcast. I know it's been a while. It's been over a month as we were in college break or whatever. I finished college. Thomas is still got a couple more years left, but we decided to take some time off to kind of regroup after the stressful college semester. But now we're all back and we'll be back with weekly episodes. Starting today, we'll be talking a lot about the NFL, mainly Bills, a lot about the NHL, mainly Sabres. Um, but we'll get into it first with the NFC Championship game. As we do know, the two Super Bowl teams are the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, the same as 2 years ago. The Eagles hope to get their revenge, but that started with the Eagles absolutely killing the Washington Commanders in that game. Thomas, what are your thoughts on that game?
Realistically, there's just a lot of stuff to talk about for this game, but the kind of way that the Commanders went about beating them in this game was they wanted to keep the ball in their possession, keep Barkley on the sideline. And the first drive, it looked very promising, driving down the field, going for it several times on that early fourth downs. For some weird reason, though, they get to the 4th and 2 inside the 15-yard line, and then that's when Dan Quinn inevitably decides to stop testing his luck. I didn't like that decision there. At that point, if you've already gone for it twice and the offense has gotten it, and on top of that, you were 9 for 9 in the playoffs to that point on 4th down conversions. So realistically, you guys should have definitely went for it again in that spot, especially being down that far. At that point, just go for the touchdown or nothing. That's realistically what I thought he was going to do at that point, and he just didn't. So interestingly enough, that's didn't work out in their favor. They end up with a field goal. Barkley's 60-yard touchdown on his first carry of the game. It's just unfortunate for the Washington faithful. Realistically, though, Jaden Daniels, he proved me and you both wrong this season by a mile. Dan Quinn, I liked the hire at head coach with Dan Quinn. I thought that was the right move. A lot of people didn't like that either, but I will say that Jaden Daniels did surpass everything we had for him this year. And despite getting absolutely blown out in this game and dominated thoroughly by their rival, the Eagles, it's one of those games. And we've seen it all the time in the regular season where teams like that play twice, like division rivals, when they play in the regular season versus the playoffs, it can be very close. A couple of years ago, Skylar Thompson started in a playoff game against the Bills, and we almost lost that fucking game. So realistically, when you play a team for the third time, it can always be scary. And the Eagles knew that going into this, that they had to go into this game knowing that this is the same team they've played before and have a good enough game plan. And they definitely did for this one. Kellen Moore is a genius on offense. I don't know why the Cowboys hired who they hired, but we'll get to that. But realistically, this Eagles game was very unfortunately sad to watch because I was really excited for this game. But for the Commanders, they'll get going. Definitely a good start for what they're building over there in Landover, Maryland. So good season for Washington. Congratulations, Philadelphia. You're back in the Super Bowl. And unfortunately, you're going up against a team looking to three-peat, which feels inevitable.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we were way off on Jane Daniels. By far my worst prediction of the season.
Maybe
That
of
and
all
the
time for me.
That yeah, it might be about
That
time. I
might
had them
be.
going 4-13. They went 12-5, made the NFC Championship game. That and then the Denver Broncos were definitely my two complete misses this year. I guess I need to put more trust in rookie quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hate the Dan Quinn hire. I didn't really like the Cliff Kingsbury hire. I've never been a big fan of him. I thought he kind of fizzled out in Arizona and had a very stale offense. So I guess I didn't really like that there that much. I didn't know how well the fit was going to be. I just didn't think they had a lot of talent, and I didn't expect Jane Daniels to be this good. I looked too much at the negatives and then used that to ignore his positives, and clearly it bit me in the ass. But overall, the Eagles just showed that they were just a much more talented and much more experienced team. The Commanders shot themselves in the foot with those couple of really bad fumbles. The Eagles were able to capitalize. And this Eagles team is just talented from top to bottom. Not really many holes you can look at and be like, they really need to improve there. I like left guard is basically their and backup tight end or and I guess receiver depth are like the only holes on offense. That like everyone else is at least a Pro Bowl, all pro caliber player. It's crazy. And then on defense, it's like maybe a game breaking defensive end and kind of a safety, I guess. Though, like there's just not many holes on this team for you to look at and be like, yeah, that's how you can exploit them. They've just been. It took basically the Jalen Hurts to get a concussion for the Eagles to have their only loss in September against the Commanders, which they avenged. They're rolling, they're firing on all cylinders going into this game against the Chiefs. Saquon Barkley, what a difference he's made. He has just been absolutely electric. And I called it. I thought he was going to be an absolute beast. I'm like, looking what he's doing in New York behind that pitiful offense, that pitiful offensive line. Then you bring him over to Philly with a rushing quarterback and a rushing and an elite offensive line. He's going to absolutely cook. And he did. He was best running back season since what? Probably Adrian Peterson. Maybe you could argue that Derrick Henry's best season above that. But either way, one of the best in recent memories. And it was kind of funny. I was looking back. I think someone like commented, so I brought it up on an Instagram comment where someone was like making fun of the Eagles, saying it was wrong for them to sign Saquon. I was in the comments like, no, I love this move. He's that much better than DeAndre Swift, who I think DeAndre Swift is awful. I think he is really bad. We'll get into that another time. But I'm like, they're like, but they really need corners. And I'm like, they can just draft corners. And then that's exactly what they did. And it was, and their quarterback room is now elite, but like, basically, they paid $4 million more a year to go from, in my opinion, I don't even know if he's a top 50 running back in this league. I think DeAndre Swift is legitimately that bad. He's Helen Keller in the backfield trying to find a hole. It's absolutely awful. And Saquon is, in my opinion, the best running back in football. So to go from a jump like that, I get running backs not the most valuable position, but in this day and age, running back value is coming back because teams are running more cover two, more shell. They're like, we're not going to let you hit the deep play. So now you have to ground and pound and hit those short passes. And so having an elite running back is more valuable because if you can rely on a run game, it opens up the pass game instead of before where it was a pass game was trying to open up the run game and you just didn't need as good of a running back for that. Now you need to rely on running backs more. That's why you've seen kind of the revolution of running backs this last year. Saquon is a big catalyst to that. So this Eagles team's really putting everything together. There's question marks at quarterback, question marks at head coach. I get that. But if you're an Eagles fan, you're feeling very good about your team right now. If you're a Commanders fan, you're absolutely ecstatic with how this season ended up. You went from having the second pick in the draft to having pick 29 now because you made the NFC Championship game. You really found something in Jane Daniels. You got him a wide receiver one. That offensive line is coming around. You got him a good running back. Zach Ertz has refound himself. That defense, while not great, has got some pieces they're building around. Dan Quinn's a great defensive coordinator. So I think both teams are very happy with where they're at. But at the end of the day, the Eagles just were way more talented at home. And when you're out talented that much, you can't make big mistakes. And that's what the Commanders did. You mentioned that 4th and 2. I thought that was a pretty dumb decision. It was weird how they kicked the field goal then after going for it twice on it was like 4th and 5.
I felt like they had a chance to make a statement at that point.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to lay down and get blown out.
Exactly. Into that atmosphere against that defense to go down the field and 18 plays it was already at and did just add on. You would have 20 plus play driver. You just kill the clock and you go and score. That could have really changed the game, but they settled for a field goal. And then, Saquon scores the next play, and it kind of went downhill from there. The fumbles really costly. Jane Daniels played great, but ultimately those fumbles just too big of a hole to climb out of, and the Eagles came away. Moving over to the other AFC Championship, or the other championship game, the AFC Championship game, is our Buffalo Bills lose once again in heartbreaking fashion. In my opinion, the second biggest heartbreak I felt from a playoff loss behind the 13 seconds game, just because it was the AFC Championship game and just, I don't know, I felt like everything was coming together and this seemed like a more vulnerable Chiefs team and we were healthy and we had everything going our way. We got through Baltimore, and for it to end like this, very, very upsetting and disappointing as the Chiefs do win 32-29. They stop the Bills on 4th and 5 with, what was it, like 2.5 minutes left at that point. Then they go and get two first. Yeah, they go and get 2 first downs, end the game, and the Chiefs make it to their 3rd straight Super Bowl. I mean, what can we say? This is the Chiefs' 5th Super Bowl appearance. They're going for the first ever three-peat. They're going for the 4th Super Bowl in the Mahomes era. They've made the AFC Championship game every year. He's been a starter. It's pretty crazy just how they go from one dynasty right to another dynasty. And it just sucks now that the Bills are the biggest victims of this dynasty, as we just can't get through the Chiefs. But at the end of the day, if you want to be the champs, like Josh said, you have to beat the champs, and they were not able to. What were your thoughts on this game?
Well, another quote from Josh Allen, it's not fun. And that's exactly how I feel at this point. It's just upsetting. And like you mentioned, it's one of the worst losses we've had. I'd put this at third behind, obviously, 13 seconds at 1. And then 2, I'm going to go ahead and put that Texans wild card game we lost, considering it would have been our first playoff game win in my lifetime. And we blew a 16-0 lead in the second half and lost in overtime. So unfortunately, that would go that would go, yeah, literally that would go in it too. And honestly, it's not even Cody Ford. They literally came out and publicly said that they were wrong for that call. So
still, I hate Cody. I hate Cody Ford.
Twice.
Cody Ford might be my least favorite Bills player of all time. But maybe someone else we'll get into when we talk about this game is creeping up that list. But right now, Cody Ford is probably one.
Yeah, we've had a really bad game with this one. Obviously, the two biggest things I'd like to say about this game is Christian Benford getting injured and then Taylor Rapp not playing are the two biggest things. Obviously, when Christian Benford went down, Kaiir Elam looked absolutely fucking lost out there, to say the least. They kept doing press man coverage on the one side, and then he would be 15 yards back, and they'd throw a 5-yard pass every single time to his side, and then he'd either A, miss the tackle, or B, completely whiffed in general. And it's just unfortunate to see. If Benford stays in that game, I think we win. On top of that, though, you can't really say too much about stuff like that, considering the Ravens last week didn't even have Zay Flowers against us. So there's a lot of people thinking that we would have lost that game, which I don't think we would have, but whatever, let people talk. Another big thing with this game, and a little bit more just on the confusing side here, is the ability of the QB sneak. Yes, it kept getting stopped, and I really do think that, at that point, we probably should have just went to a different play. But more importantly, I don't like the decision by Sean McDermott / Joe Brady, whoever's call this was, to keep going to the left side when the Chiefs' defensive line knew we were going to the left side. At that point, switch it up. Go to the right side. Or go right up the middle if you really have to, like the Eagles do with the tush push with their offense. I just don't understand why we knew they would cover the left side, and then we kept trying to go to the left side anyway. Like, that's not going to work if they're there. I love Josh Allen, but Chris Jones versus Josh Allen in that spot. Chris Jones has at least like 100 pounds on Josh Allen. You can't trust Josh Allen to just go on out-muscle a top 5 defensive tackle in the league. And it's just, I'm sorry, I love Josh Allen in the offense, but that was probably the dumbest decision of our entire season. And like I said, that cost us. That definitely cost us. I think this one hurt like the second most in the Chiefs games era because of one reason only. Every single damn year, I'm always complaining the refs either screwed us or the defense didn't give Josh a chance. This time, Josh had the ball in his hand. He had a chance to go win it, and he couldn't do it. And I'm not going to blame Josh Allen for that, but he didn't look that great in this game. And I love him. I think he's an amazing quarterback. He will forever be my favorite quarterback, regardless of who's after him. But he missed a 5-yard throw to Curtis Samuel that would have easily got us 30 yards. He had 2 plays right at the beginning of the game that were both almost interceptions. He just didn't have the mentality that he normally has in that spot. He kind of became reckless a little bit more than anything. He had that deep ball that he chucked up to Keon Coleman in like late in the first half, and it was just very confusing as well. Although there was a flag, I think that they were saying he said there was, he knew there was a flag, so maybe that one he can scratch off.
He pointed right at it, so I actually agree that. Sorry for cutting you off, but he literally, as Hollins was getting held, he was like pointing at it. So
yeah, so
that one I think he did knew.
You can scratch that one off, but still, the other ones are inexcusable. This is Josh Allen from today, not Josh Allen from his rookie season. That's stuff that Josh was doing in his rookie year, missing. And something that's a little bit more annoying as well is the Steve Spagnuolo defense where they blitzed. I can't believe we didn't just throw a 5-yard check down. And if you look on the last play of the game, I don't know if this is Josh's fault or Joe Brady's fault, but wherever the read was supposed to start, I think that they didn't do the right read to start. Because if you watch back the play in all 22, so where you can see from the top, if you watch that playback of the incompletion on the 4th and 5, Khalil Shakir ran a drag across the middle, and he was literally uncovered. and he would have easily got the first down. And so I don't know why Josh wasn't just looking for him immediately, but instead Josh Allen just rolls out to the right just a tad bit, has to throw it deep, hoping to God that Kincaid can come down with it. And I don't know what a lot of people think on this, but I think that's Josh's fault, not Kincaid's fault. And I don't think it's either of them if I had to pin it on anybody, considering I don't think it's on Kincaid for dropping it. It was way behind him and he had to run back and dive to try and even have a chance to catch it. And on Josh's side, they just there's nothing you can do when there's three people right in your face as you have to throw the ball. And on top of that, being able to even get that ball 45 yards downfield is ridiculous, considering he had to jump backwards while throwing it in the air to even get that ball out. So realistically, just a tough game. You don't like to see us lose a kind of game like that, obviously, but I think that's a game that Josh is very upset about. In out of all the games that Josh has played, even 13 seconds, I may add, that one looked like he was more depressed than I've ever seen Josh Allen, and it really makes me sad to see that because I know he believes it's his fault. I know it's like he hears all the criticism, all the backlash. Lamar's the MVP this year. He's not even the MVP. He shouldn't have even been close to the Super Bowl. Josh Allen's nothing without offensive line, or he's nothing without Joe Brady. And it's endless storylines against Josh, and it's just starting to get annoying for him. And he wanted to go out there and prove them wrong in this game. And unfortunately, we didn't get that outcome. So realistically, for Josh to go through that, it's very sad, in my opinion, because I just don't understand why they do that with teams, with players. And I saw something the other day that said that Josh Allen is now the Phillip Rivers of this era. And
It was RG3 who said that.
Yeah, RG3. And it's just, I can't disagree more because I know Josh is going to eventually get one. Whereas Phillip Rivers, it felt like there was just no chance. There was no hope. With Josh, you can see there's a little bit more hope in that regard. And Mahomes can dominate for a while, and that's fair, and he probably will. But I think that Josh Allen still has what it takes to at least win one, maybe even two or three. So realistically for this Bills team, we need to see one first before we jump to those kinds of things. But it's just, this was a sad game to watch for the Bills Mafia. Unfortunately, another loss to the Chiefs. Second time we're 0-4 in big playoff games. Yeah, I thought about that myself, and I told my buddy after the game, and he just looked at me the same way you looked at me, basically. He just was like mad at me a little bit. But 0-4 in the Super Bowl, 0-4 against the Chiefs in the playoffs in this era.
The Mahomes Chiefs, yes. The Mahomes
Chiefs. Because we beat the Chiefs before, yes, but still.
And then lost
the Super Bowl
after we beat them. But.
Very, very unfortunate loss. So, yeah.
All right, so I just want to touch up on a couple of the points where you bring up that 4th and 5. It wasn't a drag that Shakir was running. He was running that circle motion. If Josh was to throw that, he would have had to literally snap the ball and then throw it immediately. When one, Shakir was like 20 yards from a first down. The defense could have easily gotten to him in time. And two, Shakir wasn't even looking at that point. By the time Shakir was even looking and it was where he'd probably get a first down, Josh had already scrambled to his right because he had 3 guys in his face. He would have had to have been able to, with 3 guys chasing down at him, turn his hips and then have to throw it. For Shakir to get the first down, it would have had to been a good throw that leads him in stride, because if he would have had to like run backwards or jump and wouldn't have had momentum when he caught that, the Chiefs defense would have easily came up and tackled him before. So I just get frustrated when people say, oh, he should have thrown it to Shakir there. Shakir would have been a first down. He had 3 guys in his face. Like, there's just no one's able to make that throw. What do you want him to throw it behind his back? Perfect? Like, no.
Well, it's just, I think the scheming was wrong in that situation for 2 reasons. There should have been an extra. Kincaid shouldn't have even been running a route. Kincaid should not have been running a route. Kincaid should have been blocking. Kincaid should have been blocking, and then Ty Johnson should have been blocking. And then Knox should have ran the route because Knox was the one on the end, because Knox could have ran the same route Kincaid ran to get everybody off that side, and he would have had just enough time to hit Shakir for the first down on the drag.
So I agree that Ty Johnson should have been blocking, but I disagree that
Kincaid
should have been blocking, because realistically, if Torrance goes to the first inside guy and then Spencer Brown doesn't get blown up, Then it's Ty with a one-on-one, and then he probably hits Shakir. So if you have Ty in there, then there's not going to be that free rusher. If you want to give Josh Allen some blame for the protection issues, I don't know exactly what went on. I don't know I think I give more to Joe Brady for the personnel problems and more to the offensive line. But if you want to blame Josh Allen for not, I guess, reading the play and being like, oh, they're overloaded on this side, despite there not being that many receivers, they're probably blitzing from here and shifting. While I don't think it's Allen's fault, I can see why you give a little bit of blame there. But to not blame him, but to blame him for missing Shakir, it's just frustrating. Because, yeah, if you look at
Oh, no, I'm not blaming him. I didn't blame him. I blame Joe Brady because I don't know how to explain this, but the thing is with scheming in this kind of situation, it's 4th and 5. This is the game on the line. Why are you having Shakir run that route if he's not the target?
I think he was the target. It's just
that's exactly what I'm saying. So if that's the thing with Joe Brady and he was the target, why wasn't he Josh's first read? He should have been Josh's first read.
Even the problem was his first read was, oh shit, there's 3 guys in my face. He didn't have a chance to scan the field. I think he wanted to look at Shakir first. Also, the thing is, for Shakir to get open, he has to, like, in that, you have to look off other defenders. If he looks at Shakir right away, all the other defenders instantly come down on him. Shakir is not open. He has to, for that to work, you have to look at the other guys that are basically running clear out routes for Shakir to get open. You look at them, so the defenders, oh, I have to play back. And then you look at Shakir and you throw it to him. So even if Shakir is the main read, you have to try and look off the other guys. The problem is, as soon as he does that, there's 3 guys in his face, and then he doesn't get a chance to throw it to Shakir. That's what I think happened there.
That's not fully true, though, because at the same time here, if he's thinking that, if that's what the thought process is, those are clear out routes. If Josh looks at Shakir first, then the DB can come up, and then Josh can hit him over the top to Kincaid for the first down. Or if he looks at Kincaid first and Kincaid's not open, then he can throw it to Shakir. So realistically, it works the opposite way as well, where if he would have looked at Shakir, Kincaid would have got open. And so what I'm saying here is for Josh Allen is he should have realized there was going to be a blitz and realized that he should have just thrown the ball immediately.
I think if he throws the ball immediately, Shakir does not pick up the first down.
Not Shakir, Kincaid, because when Kincaid ran a corner route on the play. Kincaid ran up and out.
He ran, he was on the left side and then ran to the right. He ran an in route.
Oh, what? Well, he ran... Then,
he was on the left side and ran. Yeah, he basically ran like an in route, but he wasn't open right away. He got open. He got open after he made the cut. Yeah, it was a post route more so. He got open after he made the cut and a coverage bust. If he threw that ball to Kincaid right away, it wouldn't have been completed. I'm not arguing maybe they should have called a different play or something. I'm just saying on that play, the only issue was not getting the protection right. The route concept I thought was good. I think the protection issues and not having Ty Johnson in there to block, I think is more to blame. And while I don't want to give too much blame to Kincaid, it was a very hard catch. It's extremely frustrating year in and year out. We just don't ever have a guy that can make the catch, that can be clutch on offense. Can we have people have good games? Obviously, Gabe Davis, 13-second game. Matt Collins, James Cook tonight. Very good games. They were probably our 2 best players on offense. But when it comes down to it in a clutch scenario, can we have someone other than Josh Allen make a play? I have never seen it. It has never happened where in a playoff game, someone other than Josh Allen on the offensive side of the ball makes a clutch play. It has never happened. And that's where I get frustrated with Kincaid is can it just happen once? Can someone make a tough catch? Can someone make a deep catch? Can someone do this? Can someone do that? But it just has never happened, and it's extremely frustrating.
Well, in this game specifically, I think that what made it more frustrating for me is that this game, Josh was not that at all. Josh didn't do anything in the fourth quarter. In the
second half, he did.
In the second half, I'm saying the fourth quarter.
Though. Yes, he did. He let him on a game. Yes, he did. After they got stuffed and the Chiefs went down and scored, he let him right back down on a touchdown drive to tie the game up.
Yeah, but that's not Josh being superhuman Josh. That's not Josh breaking 3 tackles, rolling to the right, and throwing a 40-yard touchdown pass. That's Josh throwing 5-yard throws.
He
And
made
so
some
what I'm
that
saying,
that third and long throw to Matt Collins, the 4th and 5
no, it
throw
was
where he split
Shakir.
it.
The third and
No, it
long,
was
and
there
the
was the
one to
one to Matt
Shakir.
Collins. It was the post that got it down to the 5-yard line.
Yeah, it was Shakir.
That
He threw it through like two people.
Let me look at this because I'm thinking of a Matt Collins play. And
You're thinking of the Matt Collins touchdown that he caught.
no, it wasn't. Nope, it was, yeah. 3rd and 8. Josh Allen passed deep middle to Matt Collins. It was a post route right in the middle of the field. He had to hit it through on 3rd and 8. For 32 yards. It got to the 4-yard line. And then 4th and goal from the 4, he hits that beautiful throw to Curtis Samuel. Yeah, Curtis Samuel's wide open, but he had to split that right between two defenders. It's this close to getting tipped. And I'm not gonna sit around here and say Josh played like he did in the
That wasn't 4th
game.
and goal. That was the 2-point conversion. The 4th and goal was the touchdown
throw
by
to
James
Curtis
Cook.
Samuel. That was the first 4th and goal. We scored 2 touchdowns on 4th and goal.
The second one wasn't a touchdown. It was the 2-point conversion. It was 29-21.
I'm looking. No, it was 29-22. I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, I know, you're right.
4th and goal. Yeah, Josh Allen passed short right to Curtis Samuel for 4 yards, touchdown. We scored on 4th and goal twice.
And when was the other? Oh, yeah, the first James.
The 2-pointers we went for was the failed tush push, which I still don't blame McDermott. We were basically 100% for tush pushes to that point, and you get that free yard, you get that to now we would have only been down a field goal going into half. Yes, that is what ended up basically biting us in the ass was the 2-point conversions, missing those. Basically the reverse of what happened last week against the Ravens is what bit us in the ass. Yes, but at the same time, I don't blame McDermott for that decision. If he went for at the 2-yard line, that had been like kind of dumb to end the second. Yeah, no point right now. But the fact that we get that extra yard and we're so good at tush pushes to that point, because we had gotten stuffed yet. But then obviously they stuff it. We don't get it. Things happen. So I think people are giving McDermott flack for that. I don't blame him at all. I think that was the right call. And to Josh Allen, you're right. I don't think he wasn't. I think in the Chiefs playoff games, this was his 3rd best. Obviously 13 seconds was his best. Then last year, if you look at the stat line, it's not great, but we had 150 yards and drop passes, 2 Sherfield and 1 Diggs. Josh Allen was absolutely elite last year. He was making plays left and right. So I think great by Josh.
That's what I'm saying though. With this game, with Josh,
this was like
really
a B. I think it was a B plus game from Josh. I think he played.
No,
a good
I don't
game.
think it was a bad game from Josh.
That first drive was really bad, but then he followed it up with a good second drive. That third drive was rough. Basically, after that 3rd drive of the game where he missed Curtis Samuel in that drag, basically right after that is where vintage Josh Allen came back. The throw to Matt Collins before half. He made a couple of nice scrambles. And then a couple more points I want to bring up. The refereeing, it's the elephant in the room. While I will never say you lose because refereeing, because I truly don't believe that, we could have made other plays to be able to not have the refs influence the game. With that being said, the refs sucked in this game. That was a first down, and that was not a catch between Worthy and Bishop. Neither one had possession. Ball hit the ground. Not a catch. And then with the Josh Allen one, this is my issue. I get how, it's not conclusive enough to overturn it. That's where I think if you go to replay, the ruling on the field should have 0 effect on it. It should be like you've never seen the play before, and you either confirm it. Yes, I still think he was short, or even though I'm not 100%, I think he got it. I'm going to overturn it. Ruling on the field stands is the dumbest.
They should just have somebody's wife in the booth who's never watched a game of football in her life and just tell us if this guy passes the line or not.
And we also should have more camera angles. There's more technology to be able to figure. I get people saying like the tennis lines. Well, there's 20 bodies. You can't really use that technology because there's so many bodies.
I think what there should be is there should be an overhead camera at all times.
There should be an overhead, and then you use both sidelines. And then basically what you do is you time them up at the exact same time, and then you get the exact same shots. Because then you could have seen, on the one, we can't tell if the ball is passed because it's blocking Chris Jones, being blocked by Chris Jones.
He literally stood in front of it.
But it's basically like, okay, he can't really tell, but you can see, okay, he has the ball in his chest. So then you use the back one to be like, okay, his chest looks like it's over. And then you use the top one at the same time to be like, okay, that's where it's in his chest with the other 2 angles to be like, okay, he got it. You have to, one, there was not a single angle that would have been able to tell the whole story for sure. But that's where you should have used 3 different angles to come together and be like, all right, I think he got this. He got it. Because if you use different angles together, he got that. Was it for a quick second? Yes. Did he get pushed and then pushed right back? Was it real quick? Yes. But he still got it, and that's all that matters. Forward progress had it. So, not to mention the Kincaid, I thought he got a first down the play before. But either way, we had opportunities to win this game, and we didn't. So I'm not going to blame the refs. We lost because we didn't make the plays that were needed to win. That being said, the refs.
Yeah, we had the ball at the end of the game, down by 3.
Yes.
We should.
I'm taking that every time. Yes, if we have 3.5 minutes left, down by 3, us have ball, I'm taking that every single time. We weren't able to execute.
I saw a Bills fan, and obviously Bills fans can be biased because, we're all Bills fans, and this happened against us. But somebody said that if you give Josh Allen 10 drives to go 30, that length of the field in 3 minutes and 33 seconds to get a touchdown,
He's doing it 9 times.
9 times out of 10, he gets it, and that was the 10th time that he just didn't. And the worst part is this guy, he was screaming on a Instagram live. I'm not going to scream what he said because it was an explicit word that is very racist. But at the end of that, he literally left it off with they threw that flag on the 4th and 5 that just in case Kincaid caught it.
I don't know if they actually threw a flag or not. I don't know if there was a miscommunication because Nance is like, I heard there's a flag with Romo.
Flag because
but the thing is,
he caught it.
Well, yeah, I get that. Well, Nance is like, someone told me there's a flag, but then Romo's like, I don't see a flag. So I don't really know. I think that's a funny joke. They threw it just in case Kincaid caught it, but I don't really think that. I don't really agree with that. The people who say the NFL is rigged for the Chiefs, I think you guys are idiots. What the Chiefs are, they're just better at executing off other people's mistakes. So then when they get the penalties to go their way, they're like, oh, look at how it's rigged for the Chiefs. It's like, no, they're just better at taking advantage of these things versus other teams.
And the best thing that would explain that is like the Raiders fumble, where they recovered the fumble against the Raiders. The Broncos missing the blocked field goal.
Yeah, exactly. They're able to execute
off mistakes in those ways. It's not just penalties.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how they win games. Like, so yeah, they may not always win the most pretty way, but
I think the reason why people are mad is because we went from one dynasty to a new dynasty. But the difference with the Patriots dynasty is the Patriots would still find a way to lose 4, maybe even 5 games in a season, in the regular season. Yeah. And then in the playoffs, they would turn it up. The Chiefs just don't lose in general, let alone playoffs.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. And also for the Bill, I think what the thing is in the regular season, I feel like the Bills just kind of give it all they got to beat the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are kind of just like, I don't really care if we win this game. And then the playoffs, they even said, Greg Rousseau was like, yeah, we haven't seen some of these plays before. Those diamond formations where they scored 2 touchdowns on it. They haven't seen those, so they don't know how to react to those. I feel like the Bills just didn't have many of those. They didn't know how to react to some of the Spagnuolo.
That's what pissed me off a little bit, because literally Josh said that they didn't want to show some things for the playoffs, and then here we are and letting it happen to us in the AFC Championship game. Well, we did absolutely nothing new to show the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's whatever. I think this offseason, I feel a lot better about the team than last offseason. Now, last offseason, I wasn't like the window's closed. I'm like, we have Josh Allen. At the end of the day, we're contenders as long as Josh Allen is Josh Allen. But I'm like, there's a lot more work that had to be done. 40 million cap space, more free agents, an older team. This year, it's like we're basically even in cap space. I think we're a couple mil under or a couple mil over the cap. There's not many big free agents to bring back. Maybe Amari, maybe Rasul, but like DeMar's probably as good as gone. But it's like there's easy ways to clear up cap space. We have a bunch of guys we can extend. Von Miller either takes a pay cut or gets cut. Josh Allen restructure. Ed Oliver restructure. Maybe Milano will take a pay cut or something. Dawson Knox, Deion Dawkins. There's a lot of ways we can easily get to 30, 40 million cap space. And not to mention, we have 3 picks in the top 62, and I think we're going to have 10 overall because I think we're going to get a 4th and 5th round comp pick for Leonard Floyd and
Cooper if he leaves.
No. We wouldn't get the comp pick this year. That'd be next year. I'm thinking, Douglas. Who was it? No. It not any. It was a free agent we lost from last year. It was Leonard Floyd and someone else. Oh, Gabe Davis.
Oh, Gabe.
I think we get a fourth for Gabe and a fifth for Leonard Floyd.
Gabe might be a late third, I think.
I don't think he got enough money. He got less money than Tremaine Edmonds, and we only got a fourth for Edmonds. So.
Oh, okay.
So I think it'll be Gabe. We'll get a fourth and a fifth. So we'll have like 4 fourth-round picks or whatever, and like a fifth and like 3 sixths, along with our first and 2 seconds. So we have ammo if we want to go make a big swing for a trade, or if we want to trade up in the draft to make sure we get guys. We just have a lot more. Last year was more about retooling. This is all right. Now we have those assets built up. We have a good, nice young base to build around. And we're not really losing many guys. We're not losing that many impactors because DeMar, I think, is worse than Cole Bishop. I think DeMar next year will be worse than Cole Bishop. So not downgrading at safety. Corner.
I think if anything, we just draft a safety at this point. If Xavier Watts falls to us, I would not be opposed to getting him out of Notre Dame.
Not at pick 30, but pick 56. Watts definitely not drafting. The only safety I'd be okay with drafting the first round is Malachi Starks. Yeah. But we'll get into that when we get more into the offseason. If you want to hear my take on what the Bills should, like the Bills 53-man roster should be, go check out Buffalo Bills Cast. It's another podcast. You can find us on Twitter and YouTube, where me and my co-host Caleb there discuss what we want to see. I have some spicy predictions or things I want to see, some big trades and stuff. But anyways, let's talk about the season that had just happened. Instead of dwelling on the negative, there's a lot of positives from the season. A lot of people predicted us to have single win seasons or go 10-7 and take second or third in the division. And that didn't happen. We continued to trot right along. Josh Allen had arguably his best season of his career. We go 13-4, probably would have been 14-3 if we had anything to play for the last week, but whatever. I don't really care that much. We won our 5th straight AFC title. The offense, this is probably the second best offense. You can argue maybe even the best offense in the Josh Allen era. That in 2020. It's between those two. And then the defense, while struggled at times, made a lot of big plays, a lot of turnovers, which is something we had struggled in years past, where it was kind of just a bend, don't break conservative defense. They were much more aggressive this year. So some breakout stars. The offensive line proved to be top 3 unit in the league. Josh Allen, Khalil Shakir, James Cook on the offense. On the defense, Greg Rousseau took another step. Christian Benford took another step. The linebackers, obviously, Dorian Williams took a huge step. Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano at the end of the year finally looked like they were back to their groove. Teron Johnson, obviously. So there's a lot of pieces, a lot of bright spots from the team. I guess I want to give the floor to you to talk about things you liked and didn't like from this season.
So I have one thing that's going to surprise everybody, but before I get to that, realistically, this was Josh Allen's year that he turned into like the Aaron Rodgers, basically a ton of touchdowns, no interceptions, very, very good with the football, took care of it for most of the season. Realistically,
he kind of reminded me of the worst 22 Mahomes.
Yeah.
Loses his number one receiver and turns into that dink and dunk guy. But it worked.
Yeah, it did work.
Defense gives you you got to.
I said it last offseason to all the assholes out there that thought we were going to be garbage, that Josh Allen is a better quarterback than any of you are giving him credit for. And losing Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis didn't mean anything. Gabe was way too inconsistent, and Diggs was a diva that just wanted the ball. Now Josh could be able to move freely and throw the ball to whoever he wants to. It's just a whoever gets it mentality versus, I need to make sure that Diggs gets 6 catches in this game. It's almost like in Madden. Think about it this way. If you get one of those stupid dev trait challenges for one of your players and you need 150 rushing yards with your running back, what are you going to do the whole game? Run the fucking football with him until he gets it, right?
Yeah. Even if you win or lose, who cares?
Exactly. You know what the problem is, though, is 90% of the time, if that's what you're doing, you're not going to win the game. And that's the thing, is in this kind of situation, could you imagine you need 2 touchdowns with a running back or 2 touchdowns with one of your receivers, and you have to make sure he gets those 2 touchdowns or his dev trait doesn't increase. When you get down to the 5-yard line, instead of being smart and running the football in for the 5-yard touchdown that would be free, you decide to force it into a double fucking covered window just to try and get this guy the football, and it gets picked off. This is the problem. And this is exactly what Diggs was doing to this team. And to see it this year be debunked that we were going to be garbage was the best feeling that I've had in a long time watching Bills football. It was funny to me that everyone thought we'd be lower than the Jets, who literally have probably gone with the worst situation they could have gone with for this offseason. And it's just hilarious to me to see what they did. And as for Miami, I think Miami would have made the playoffs if Tua would have been healthy the whole season.
I kind of
That's
wish
for sure.
I kind of wish they made the playoffs, so it could have been like, oh, that's another playoff team we beat twice. It's another team with a winning record. So it's like, oh, they only beat 2 teams with winning records. It's like, yeah, but the Dolphins are a winning record playoff level team with healthy Tua, and we beat them twice with a healthy Tua. Sorry
Yeah,
for
exactly.
interjecting.
No, you're so right though, and it's super annoying to see that the narrative is just different than it was in years past. Josh with potentially the MVP season that he's been looking for, and not even him, just we have been, I guess, more or less. But to see the team take that step forward was really nice on the offensive side. However, and I mean the biggest however I could possibly say, the defense 110% needs to be better next season. The only part of the entire defense that didn't disappoint me this season was the linebacking core when Terrell Bernard and Milano were on the field.
And Milano was healthy.
Yes, the defensive line was absolute garbage this season. I don't care what everybody says about Greg Rousseau. Greg Rousseau had a bad season, and I'll tell you why. He had 8 sacks this season. 8 sacks. He had 3.5 in one game in week 1 against the Cardinals, in a game that I was at. 3.5 sacks in one game. Half of his sacks came from one goddamn game. And everybody said that he took the step forward. Yes, maybe in the running game, he did. But in the pass rush game, we still need somebody to rush the passer at an efficient level because clearly he can't do it. And I don't know what to say about it because Ed Oliver and the D-line, they should be opposites. Ed Oliver's a pass rush specialist, whereas Greg Rousseau is mainly run stopping. They should not be defensive tackle and defensive end. They should be flipped at that point. And unfortunately, obviously, Ed Oliver's he does not have the size, like the smallness to play on the outside. And same for Groot in the middle, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, their skill sets are the opposite of what their position entails. And it's just so annoying to me to see that. As for the safeties, Damar Hamlin, please never come back. I'm sorry. I don't care that you passed away during a football game. You just like bye.
My eyes.
Like I hate the fact that we're only going to keep him and we've only kept him this far because of that. And it's just very annoying to me because he shouldn't be starting. We know he shouldn't be starting. It's like, could you imagine a kicker passes away on the field and then comes back and then he misses 15 kicks out of his 16 kicks and you still keep him as your starting kicker next season? How stupid would you be? You'd be very stupid. And that's the exact same situation with Damar Hamlin. He's not a starting caliber safety. Maybe a good backup, but not a starter. Not a starter at all. And as for Cole Bishop, I expected rookie pains. I expected those kinds of things. And while Taylor Rapp was a good safety while healthy, so Cole Bishop didn't have to play too much, it's still very annoying to me to see that situation with Cole. But
I thought he played decent in the Chiefs game, though.
Yeah, in the Chiefs game, he did play decent. I'm just saying
that was probably his best game of the year. No, I agree. Yeah, he definitely had
the beginning of the year. He had a lot of rookie pains, and then if the cornerback room could stay healthy, they were good. Teron Johnson, another good season. Rasul Douglas was solid on his side. It's just we need a little bit more out of those guys sometimes. And realistically, with Rasul, I don't know if he's going to be back next year. I think he's probably going to price himself out of Buffalo, and it's unfortunate, but I just think we need somebody to upgrade that secondary. And so this offseason, it's not about what the offense needs to do. It's not about how they need to get better. It's not about those kinds of things. You need the defense to be way better than what it was this year. You really, really, really desperately do. I love Groot. I think he's a great player. He had some good games. He had some good moments, but 4 of his 8 sacks were in one game, damn near. And it's just like, I hate the fact that everybody looks at the stats at the end of the season. Ooh, 8 sacks. Yeah, it's a pretty good season from him. He had 3.5 in one game. And it's just so deflating when I look at the stats and see 3.5 in one game in that Cardinals game, because I don't want to take away what Groot did this season because he had a solid year. It's just he didn't have the year we needed for him, especially in the big moments in the playoff game. Absolutely like nothing for the first half. And then the second half, he started getting some good pressure in, but it just wasn't enough. And in those kinds of games, you need to play a full 4 quarters. And we just couldn't do that on either side of the ball. The Chiefs just kept moving the ball down with will. If it wasn't for Mahomes dropping a snap, we probably were down 28-10 at halftime. At least 24-10 at halftime, more than likely, had we not gotten some lucky fumble from Mahomes, which you'll never get again, mind you. Never going to happen again in the playoff game. I guarantee it, against the Bills. So realistically, to have the forced turnover, to lead in the turnover difference, to have all those things go your way and still not win that game is just gut-wrenching. And the fact of the matter is, it's because of that defense. It's because of that defense. Josh Allen and the boys put up 29 points. And I don't care that they couldn't finish on the last drive. I don't care that Josh had some terrible throws. The defense should not be giving up 32 points to the worst, and I mean the worst, Chiefs offense I've seen in the Mahomes era. So realistically, we really needed something in this game.
Personally, I think last year's Chiefs offense was worse. This year,
They're
better.
Really not much different, in my opinion.
I think this year the Chiefs offense was better at controlling the ball, and having more sustained drives. So they didn't have the point totals because they basically had the same thing every time. They're like, we're gonna go on these 10 to 12 play drives to keep your offense off the field and end up with a touchdown or a field goal most times, and just not have a lot of drives to have that total point outage. But I get what you're saying for sure. This is the first time they scored over 30 all year, was against us in the playoff game. Not good. The one point I want to touch on with Groot is, yes, did he have that elite pass rush top 5 season we were kind of all hoping for, especially after week 1? No. Did he still have a great year? I think he did. Because if you look at the pressure numbers, if you look at the run defense, the fact that how big he is, it makes teams less be able to throw like over him because he can get those pass deflections. Yes.
Right.
I think he's great at those things. I think at this point, he's never going to develop into an elite pass rusher. Exactly. And that's why I want to go and get Max Crosby. And I would even be fine with trading Greg Rousseau to get Max Crosby, so you don't have to give up as many draft picks, because Max Crosby is also an elite run defender, has that hustle, he just doesn't have the size group, but he's also he's a top 5 pass rusher in this game.
I'd rather trade Epinesa.
My thing is, if you trade Epinesa, then you're going to have 2 $20+ million defensive ends on your team. Can we really afford to that? My thing is, can we really afford to pay a Max Crosby, a Greg Rousseau, while also giving Josh all that money, with also giving both those tackles all that money, with also, we probably want to give back, bring James Cook back, and then add Oliver's contract, Benford's contract, Shakir's contract. I just don't think we can afford to have 2 defensive ends at that price tag. Yes, Greg Rousseau is going to be a little bit cheaper than Max Crosby because he's not as good, but I just don't think we can afford to have that much money tied up in defensive ends. So personally, I would rather trade Greg and maybe like a second to go get Max Crosby. And then you have that game record. And then you have like a Javon Solomon you hope continue to develop. You have the AJ Epinesa. You have maybe a Von Miller if he takes a pay cut. You have Dwayne Smoot if you want to bring him back. You have a lot of decent pieces that can kind of clean up when Max
You have those Casey Two Hills.
No. You have Ed Oliver on the inside to clean up when Max gets that pressure around the side, and then the quarterback has to step up and move around. You have guys that can help clean it up that are capable of it. So that's where it's like, I love Greg Rousseau. I think he's a top 10 to 15 defensive end in this league because of him. He's basically elite. He's elite at everything except for being a game-breaking pass rusher. The problem is that's the most important part.
Elite. I'd say
he's an elite run defender. He is an elite run defender.
Yes.
And he has elite size. That's what I'm saying.
Pressure rate at those 2 things. He has great size, great speed. But like, yes, I wouldn't say elite in those things.
Well, he is elite size. He has great speed. He's elite against the run. He gets good pressures. He's just not able to finish. He doesn't have that game-breaking pass rush ability, and that's really the difference between him and a Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, is he just doesn't have that game break. If he could ever develop that, oh my God, I just don't think he will. That's where I'd be fine with trading him away.
I just don't think we'd get Max Crosby for the simple fact of, like, we normally don't trade players.
Well, and I get that, and it definitely would be tough. It's definitely risky for sure. Given Max Crosby's a little bit older, cap hit, yada yada yada. I just think we need a game record. I just don't think Greg Rousseau will ever become a game record. Has he gotten better every single year? Yes. I just don't think he's ever going to develop into that game record. And because of that, I'm fine with trading him to go and get a Max Crosby, who is a game record, because I don't think we can afford to pay both of them. And I don't want to let Groot walk for nothing next year. Especially if we say we trade for just Max Crosby, we're going to have to give up at least a first and a second, probably more. And then just to let Groot walk for nothing. And it's like kind of losing on a lot of value there.
No. I think if we trade for Max Crosby, Groot is gonna somebody on the D line is gonna have to be involved, and more than likely would be Groot. Considering next year, I think would be the year
we have to pay him. He's a free agent after this year. And for the Raiders side, it makes a lot of sense. They have so much cap space over the next couple years.
He fits the timeline a little better.
Exactly. He fits the timeline, and they can afford to pay him because they have the most cap space over the next 3 years out of any team in the league. And if they trade Max Crosby, it's even more cap space. So right. I think it makes sense for the Raiders. It makes sense for us. Will it probably happen? No. Do I want it to happen? Yes. But ultimately, that's just kind of the Greg Rousseau tangent I wanted to go on. Because I think he, by many people, gets overrated because those sack numbers, and by some people he gets underrated because they're like, well, he blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's somewhere in the middle is where he's at, in my opinion. But I think that's wrapping up for our Bills segment as we move into, there's other NFL teams. So there's other NFL news. Over the last couple weeks, the coaching carousel has almost finished its job up. The only job left is the Saints, where it's looking like Kellen Moore is going to get the job. He's the favorite. The reason nothing can be announced right now is because obviously Kellen Moore is preparing for a Super Bowl, so he can't take that job. But I'm just going to run through all of the head coaching signings, then we'll get into some of them. Dallas fires Mike McCarthy, hires Brian Schottenheimer. The Bears, obviously they fired Matt Eberflus. They hired Ben Johnson. The Jaguars they cleaned house. They fired Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke, but they fired Trent Baalke later, which brought Liam Cohen over in a whole crazy drama-filled night. If you're a Jags and Bucks fan, that was interesting to keep track of that entire time. I know a Jags and a Bucks fan, and they're friends, so it's kind of funny. And then the Raiders, they hire Pete Carroll. The Patriots hire Mike Vrabel after they fired Gerard Mayo. Oh, and it was after the Raiders fired Antonio Pierce. And then, the Saints, they're still looking for their coach. I'm trying to think. Did I forget? Oh, yeah. Then the Jets hired Aaron Glenn after firing Robert Saleh. All right. What I want to ask you is, what is your most overrated head coaching signing and your most underrated?
So I've heard a lot of people thinking that Aaron Glenn is going to be a really, really, really big signing for the Jets. And while I don't think it's a terrible signing, I just feel like people are a little too overzealous in what he's going to be doing for the Jets. I think he can keep the Jets afloat longer than any other of these coaches really could have. However, here's the problem. He's a defensive-minded head coach in the NFL today, and defensive-minded head coaches just don't really pan out too well. And so realistically, I do think that he's a solid head coach and that he can do what is needed to. He can bring that defense back to normal, but I think the offense is still going to be bad because he's nothing on the offensive side. And because of that, I feel like the Jets are still going to be decent next year at best, maybe 10 wins if they're lucky. And that's if the offense is really, really good. So I'd say right now with Aaron Glenn and the roster they have currently with the projection of what they can do this offseason, I'd say their max win total, in my honest opinion, would be 7 wins. So realistically, because of that, I just can't put him too high. I've heard a lot of people saying the Jets are back, they're going to the Super Bowl. They're not going to even make the playoffs. I'm sorry, but it's not even just being a Bills fan. It's just I don't think Aaron Glenn's going to be the right move, especially in a market like today. With all the other candidates. And then the one that I'd say is underrated, I've heard a lot of bitching about Liam Cohen going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I hate it so damn much because I think it's underrated. I really think he's a very underrated offensive coordinator from Tampa Bay. And I called this, by the way. I will admit, I called Liam Cohen going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I called 3 of the head coaching signings, actually, to be fair. Ben Johnson to the Chicago Bears, and then Aaron Glenn to the Jets as well were my other 2 that I called.
I think I called 3, but not the actually no 4. Yeah, 4, because I also called the Vrabel to the Patriots one.
Oh, if you count Vrabel, then yes. I'm only counting the big 5 that we had going into the actual offseason because me and my buddy did predictions afterwards in our podcast. So after the Mike Vrabel news, but before that, I had already had sneaking suspicions that it'd be Vrabel for that. But anyway, Liam Cohen's just a very good offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. He helped them do a lot of good things last year. I think if there's a guy that can help Trevor Lawrence get back on track, it's going to be him. I think he can do a lot with this team as well. I don't think Gabe Davis is a game wrecker by any means, but you got a lot of solid receiving options. You have a 2-man backfield just like he had in Tampa Bay. And this is exactly why I picked him for 2 reasons. 1, he gets to stay in the state of Florida. And 2, this offense is eerily similar to the one he just had. Eerily similar. Yeah. You have a quarterback who was drafted high in the draft, first overall, if you want to get even more technical, who really didn't look that great, and now all of a sudden is back on into form. You know, a career renaissance season is needed for Trevor Lawrence in this situation, much like it was for Mayfield. And then you got the 2 running back set, Rachaad White and Bucky Irving in Tampa. This time it's Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. I really like what they have on offense here. And because of that,
an elite offensive wide receiver 1, Mike Evans, Brian Thomas Jr.
Well, it's very debatable in that situation. I need to see a little more from Brian Thomas before I say Mike Evans, obviously.
I think Brian Thomas Jr. is better than Mike Evans right now.
Well, that's because Mike Evans is at the tail end of his career, but I'm saying career trajectory wise, I can't put Brian Thomas
No, you're right. I'm just saying Mike Evans is a wide receiver 1. Brian Thomas Jr. is a wide receiver. I'm saying if you're comparing situations from 2023 Tampa to 2024 or 2024 Tampa to 2025 Jacksonville is what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. I'm not saying Brian Thomas Jr. will have a Mike Evans career. I'm not saying that.
Yeah. But all I'm saying, though, with Liam Cohen is I really like the outlook for this offense because of that. I think that the big issue for them has been the offense's inconsistency while the defense is trying to stay afloat with the pass rush doing all it can. I think realistically at this point, if I'm Jacksonville, the biggest thing you need to worry about is shoring up that secondary, and you really might have a decent, maybe even 8 to 10 wins next season. I think you could realistically, I think their ceiling, if they go out and do some stuff on that defense to get the defensive secondary a little bit better, and then maybe the offensive line as well. If those 2 things can be met this offseason, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about the 10-7 or 11-6 Jags next season. And because of that, I think that they might take a jump like the Chargers did this year, where they just got a new head coach, a new identity, and they came out and really shocked everybody. And I would not be surprised if that's them next season. So I'm going to go ahead and make him my underrated head coach. I really did like to consider Mike Vrabel as well for that. I think he's also a pretty underrated candidate. I think he can offer a lot more to the offense than people entail. And I think on the opposite side, obviously defensively, we know what he can do. So there's always that. And overall, the best signing is Ben Johnson to the Bears. I think that one's pretty unanimous. So
and then the worst is Marty Schottenheimer.
Pete Carroll. Oh no. Yeah, you're right. Holy shit. I didn't even think about him. Brian Schottenheimer. Yeah,
I said Marty because he's so yeah. All right. Well, I guess I will give my takes. I'm actually, while I'm kind of mad you took the underrated, you took the Liam Cohen for me because that's what I wanted to say. For underrated, because I completely agree. I think the Jags offense is going to take a jump back. I love Liam Cohen. You know how much I love my McVay tree guys. I think they always work out. Obviously, Sean McVay himself, Kevin O'Connell, Liam Cohen in Tampa last year.
The only one that hasn't yet, I'd say, is Clint Kubiak.
The Saints offense was cooking before their entire offensive line got injured, then their entire receiving core and quarterback all got injured. To be fair, they were basically for half the year had a practice squad offense. So I will cut him some slack. Did he just sign somewhere? He became the offensive coordinator somewhere else.
Yeah, I know. I just can't remember.
And I remember hearing, Seattle, because I'm like, I really like that for them. I think he's
Ryan Grubb. He took Ryan Grubb's spot.
Yeah, he's going to help. I think he really helps revitalize that run game. But we'll get into some coordinator talk after we talk head coaching. I'll just mention some guys. But for me, the most overrated signing, it's funny you bring up Mike Vrabel. I actually have him as the most overrated. I think his biggest knocks in Tennessee was he was statistically the worst fourth down coach in the league, like by win probability. He had some awful decisions to punt. He was very conservative. And in this day and age, the teams that are very good on fourth down, literally the top 4 teams in fourth down conversions this year were the 4 teams in the championship games. The Bills, Commanders, Eagles, and Chiefs. Like the NFL is changing. Teams are going for it on fourth down more and more. And he just seems like an old school guy that just wants to punt it more. And his other knack was he didn't hire great assistant coaches around him. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'll learn in New England. And then he goes and hires Josh McDaniels as his offensive coordinator. That dude might be the third worst offensive mind of all time behind Adam Gase and Nathaniel Hackett. Josh McDaniels is a complete moron who got carried by Tom Brady for his entire career. Why do you think as a head coach, both offenses he's had have been god-awful? He is a terrible.
Well, to be fair, the one in Denver, he had Kyle Orton at quarterback.
Yeah, I get he hasn't had good quarterbacks, but still, he was carried by Tom Brady. His offense was terrible. He's a terrible offensive coordinator. So that's where I was.
I don't think he's going to be terrible though, because
I think he's going to be awful. I think.
Well, Drake May has good upside though.
Drake, yeah, I think Drake. I love Drake May. I thought, if they pair him with an offensive-minded like guru or something, he could be a top 10 quarterback in the league next year. I'm saying, yeah, if they could have gotten for a head coach, I'm saying even offensive coordinator after they hired Vrabel. I'm like, all right, well, maybe he can redeem himself by getting. I'm not a big fan of Slowick. I think he likes to run the ball way too much, even if you have a bad offensive line. And I think in New England that would end poorly. He did the same thing in Houston this year. That's partly, I think, why he got fired. But anyways, I just think Josh McDaniels is a complete moron. And I think that's a terrible. And that is where it's like, all right, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, see how you felt your staff. And then you go and hire him. And that's where I'm like, all right, I just don't think this is a good hire. I think you're right. I think the defense will be better. And I think that they'll be more competitive. As the Bills fan in me, I was ecstatic. I'm like, let's go. They're trying to sabotage Drake May by hiring Josh McDaniels. He's a moron. That's awesome. But as an NFL fan, I'm like, what are you doing? It just didn't make any sense to me. And so that's why I have him as the most overrated. And then underrated, since you took away Liam Cohen, funny enough, you at first said he was the worst. I actually think the Pete Carroll signing is very underrated because I think he's a very good bridge coach. Well, he's 73 years old, so is he your future coach? No, but they have the most cap space over the next 3 years. They're going to be bad for the next couple of years. What I think he can do is he can help culture change. I think he obviously had a good culture when he was the head coach at USC. That's why they were really good. And then brought over to Seattle. He had a very good culture there. Very gritty, defensive-minded. So what I think is he can bring that. They can start to develop more pieces. Maybe get a quarterback this year. Personally, I think they should wait for the next 2 years. I think the classes are way better. But I think what you can do is you can finally build up that foundation and get that culture in the right direction. Because the Raiders, they've just had a bad losing culture for years now. Because they keep cycling through head coaches. I think Pete Carroll's the perfect guy. I think he'll help on that defensive side of the ball. And I think he's a good culture shifter. They only gave him like a 3-year deal. He can coach for 3 years, then go retire, and then they can go and hire the guy who's going to be the future, some offensive-minded guy to pair with their young quarterback, whoever it is at the time. And I think that is a good way to build from how bad they've been. So I really like that hire. Again, I don't think he's he's going to be a future guy. I don't think he coaches I don't think he coaches there more than a few years, but I think he'll do a lot of good in those years to help get them on the right track to becoming contenders. So that's why I have that. But yeah, the best easily Ben Johnson. You pair someone like Ben Johnson with someone like Caleb Williams. I think very good things can happen there. And then the worst is Brian Schottenheimer. He's been offensive coordinator for a bunch of mid teams. He was like the 2000s Jets. The early 2010s Sam Bradford, St. Louis Rams. His only, I guess, successful tenure, the 2018 to 2020 Seahawks, but even then, halfway through 2019 and all of 2020, that offense was pretty mid. So even he kind of fell off there. And then I guess last year in Dallas, the offense was really good, but then it fell apart this year. So I think that's a terrible hire. But I think they did do a good job with hiring Matt Eberflus to be the defensive coordinator. Give him all the flack you want for being a bad head coach. I think he's a very good defensive mind. Look at Chicago's defense, how it fell apart the last month of the year once they fired him. I thought Indy, their defense completely fell apart the last 2 years after he left. I think Eberflus, a very good defensive-minded coach, but that brings up a couple of other. Robert Saleh went back to the Niners. He's the defensive coordinator there. What's his face? Dennis Allen is joining Ben Johnson in Chicago, being the defensive coordinator. They also hired Declan something, the tight ends coach from Denver, which brings me into a point where at first when I saw that, I'm like, why are they hiring a tight ends coach? But then I was watching this video on TikTok from this TikToker, like Anthony Lawson, and he brought up this, like, that there's like a renovation of a lot of tight end coaches have become hot topic guys to hire to be offensive minded guys because of as a tight end, you have to be in tune with the run game and the pass game. That's why these guys have become really good. Like Ben Johnson was a tight ends coach. That's where he got promoted to offensive coordinator, from tight ends coach. Dan Campbell, tight ends coach. One of the hot topic guys being hired for offensive coordinator, one of the tight ends coach for the Rams. Sean McVay was a tight ends coach. And what all these guys have in common is they're very good at scheming up the run game while also scheming up good pass plays too, because the tight end, you're in tune with both. So I think that is a very underrated thing to go down the line. I'm thinking maybe the Bills should look at that because Joe Brady's probably gone next year. I have a feeling he's going to get a job next year. I think this year he kind of wanted to test the waters, kind of like Ben Johnson last year, and then next year he's going to take a job. So if we're looking for someone to replace him, I'm thinking you hire someone for maybe the Rams or the Vikings or the Lions to be your tight ends coach and then eventually take over. I think that's a sneaky. I just wanted to bring that point up. I thought it was very interesting. I had never thought of that as like why tight ends coaches, but I just wanted to bring that point up. Are there any coordinator? Yeah, are there any coordinator that you really like being hired this cycle?
There's been a couple that have been interesting. One that I really didn't want to bring up is Brian Flores, though. I really am a little intrigued that he still is in Minnesota after the season they just had. I feel like there's got to be something there where, like, I would have really liked him to go to a team that needs a head coach, just in case like a head coach gets fired mid-season, he can be the interim guy and give himself a chance to even like potentially get back into head coaching and prove himself again. So that's a little unfortunate, but obviously there's been some different ones this season than last year. I thought last year's was very interesting with Brian Callahan. He came out of left field. Realistically, the only one this year that was kind of under the radar confusing for me was Schottenheimer. Absolutely hated that addition. And then realistically, the guy who should have taken over that job was Kellen Moore, who literally would have been the perfect fit considering he played for the Cowboys. And then he was not only playing for the Cowboys as quarterback, he also backed up Dak Prescott. So he's got a good relationship with Dak and a good relationship.
He was also the offensive coordinator there in 2022.
Exactly. And then he's off
until 2022, I think.
Yeah, I know. And so it's just stupid to me that they didn't go and get him instead. So there's been a lot of stuff that could have been different, I guess, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. There's also one more I wanted to mention. I forgot the guy's name, but the Bengals fired Lou Amarillo, which I thought was I thought it was dumb. I thought he got scapegoated for they're just not having a lot of talent there. But then they did hire the Notre Dame's defensive coordinator. I can't remember his name. And I think that's a very good hire because look at Notre Dame. It's not like they're oozing with NFL talent coming out of their defense every single year. Yet Notre Dame always seems to have a pretty good, pretty respectable defense. So I think you got to give a lot of credit to the coaching there. They made it to the national championship a lot based on their defense. And how many guys are they going to have drafted in that defense?
It's Al Golden, 3? By the way.
Al Golden. Yeah. Xavier Watts, Benjamin Morrison, and Jack Kaiser are probably the only guys that get drafted from Notre Dame this year.
Yeah.
And I mean, even
linebacker, and I can't remember his name. He was
that was Jack Kaiser.
Yeah, no, it's a different guy.
I mean, they have a couple maybe in the next couple years too.
Like he committed to Indiana and then flipped last second to Notre Dame.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. So they have a couple of underclassmen but like it's not like they're like in Alabama or an Ohio State that just flooded with NFL talent. They still had arguably the second or third best defense in the country this year. I think a lot of it had to do with Al Golden.
Scheming.
So
with him.
I really like that hire there. As a Bills fan, I don't like it that much because
I definitely don't either.
I want the Bengals to suck, but whatever. Got to talk about that. So I think that is it for our NFL segment. As we get into, we're going to talk about depression. The Buffalo Sabres. They are the definition of poverty and depression. When we last left off, me and Thomas were continuing to rant about them being on a 13-game win streak. Shockingly, they actually didn't win a game. That's what I meant to say. Losing streak, because they will never go on a
13-game win streak. Never.
That'll never happen. Yeah, the Sabres suck too much. But they actually shockingly won a game. They won a couple. They went on a little run. They've actually, since that losing streak, they've been playing a lot better hockey. The problem is they dug themselves such a deep hole that it does not
like
really
every other season.
Exactly. This year, it seems like it's even worse of a hole. The Lindy Ruff hire is not seeming to work out too well. This is what happens when you try and run the same team back every year after it's not good enough to make the playoffs. Because player progression is not linear. The Sabres were banking on it being linear, and then it bit them right in the ass. But there are some talks that the Sabres are deluding themselves into believing, because that's basically, as a Sabres fan, you have to delude yourself into believing for anything good. The Canucks are blowing up at this moment. And there's just a lot of turmoil between arguably their two best forwards and JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. So it's looking like they might just trade both of them and Brock Besser, just trade everyone except for Quinn Hughes, then use all those assets to go get different guys. I don't know. But Elias Pettersson seems to be on the market, and the Sabres are reported to be the favorite, and they have gotten the financial green light from the owner reportedly to go and make this move. So what are your thoughts on the Pettersson deal? I guess you want to give what your mock trade would be for it. I know you have made one. I have also. So if you want to talk about yours, I'll talk about mine, and then we can kind of discuss where we're coming from.
Yeah, so realistically, I just made an article about this actually for one of our sports classes here.
Buffalo Sports Insider, go check it out.
Yes,
BSI.
Indeed. Very fun indeed, but just made an article about the Elias Pettersson turmoil and everything going on. He's currently in the middle of a down season. This has been his worst season professionally so far, with only 30 points in 42 games played. He's been dealing with some injuries, and like you said, player progression is never going to be linear, so you can't always expect him to be amazing, especially in the season right now playing for the Canucks, where he's been having a lot of turmoil with some of the other superstars or players in general there, with JT Miller and a few others. But realistically, it's bringing down the locker room. And one thing I would like to say here before I get into a mock trade is, how many times can you say that there's a franchise caliber player on the market? This doesn't happen very often.
Like once every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and for the chance to get a financial green light like this to go out and make a trade that can really change a lot is something that's very big for the Sabres. Two things here. Tage Thompson, if this trade happens, Tage Thompson can go down to the second line. Elias Pettersson can play line one, and that fills the line two center role desperately.
Wow. I have a different idea with that, but I'll get into it when I'm talking.
Yeah. Also on top of that, though, you also have a little bit better situation here, as Elias Pettersson's favorite teammate, actually 3 seasons ago. I remember this 3 seasons ago. Elias Pettersson stated that his favorite teammate ever was Rasmus Dahlin when they played for the Swedish men's team in World Juniors for 4 seasons in a row before playing in the Olympics.
And they'll be playing together in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, in the Four Nations face-off, he will be playing there as well, together with his buddy. So your captain is literally going to be insanely good friends with your potential new forward. There's a lot of really good that can come from this. And so I went ahead and made a mock trade for this, and a lot of people have been happy with it. A lot of people have been, what the hell is wrong with me? Well, it all starts with Bowen Byram. And the unfortunateness of this is Bowen Byram wants $9 million per season, according to a lot of insiders. And with us already paying north of $8 million for Owen Power on his next deal, I think it is exactly $8 million per season for Owen Power, and then obviously well over $10 million for Dahlin. you're really going to be pushing it, trying to pay 3 defensemen, literally a third of our league salary cap. You just can't do that in today's NHL. You're going to have to find some middle 6 guys, middle 3 for that with the top 2 guys we have. So realistically here for the Vancouver Canucks, I think that they really do need that top end D-man. And a lot of people are like, well, why would they want Bowen Byram? They already have Filip Hronek and Quinn Hughes. Well, here's the deal. There's been a lot of talks that Filip Hronek could be another one of the guys that gets dealt this offseason, if not before the season's over. So you could definitely see that happening as well. So we'll see where that goes. But I definitely wanted to mention that with them, that that's something they really need to do. And I'm trying to remember here just really quickly what else it was. I just deleted the
Cousins probably.
It is not Dylan Cousins. It is Jack Quinn that is part of the deal.
My mock trade is completely different than yours.
Well, here's the issue. I like Dylan Cousins on the wing, and I think that if you get rid of Jack Quinn, Dylan Cousins can be a mainstay on the wing, especially since you can move Thompson down to line 2. He can play line 2, and then you got Pettersson on line 1 with the other 2 guys. Pettersson's more of a playmaker, so Pettersson being on the center lineup there is just perfect for us. Put Thompson at line 2, or realistically, you could put Thompson line 1 and Pettersson line 2. But in this kind of situation, I think Pettersson is way better with the upside to play line 1. So Pettersson also offers way more defense than Thompson, in my opinion. So because of that, I think that that's just easier for us to do. Either way, though, this trade involves specifically a first-round pick from this year, a second-round pick next year, and a second-round pick from the year after that. So 2 second-round picks for the next 2 years after this one, a first-round pick, our first-round pick from this season. And that is just in case, because I made 2 different scenarios based off of what the not the Red Wings, I don't know why I said the Red Wings, what the Vancouver Canucks want. So the first one, and the one that I'm going to mention here, is Bowen Byram, Jack Quinn, a first from this season, a second next year, and then a second the year after for Elias Pettersson straight up. And just in case you guys are wondering, I'll throw out the other one as well. The other one is Dylan Cousins centered, so you can fulfill this. So Dylan Cousins, Consta Helenius, a first-round pick this year, and 2 seconds. 1 from next year and 1 from the year after. And that's just in case they want forward-specific players, because Consta Helenius can be the guy that – because realistically, JT Miller's not going to fetch them anything if they trade him. He's not going to fetch much of anything as opposed to Elias Pettersson. So you might as well go out and take a shot and get Consta Helenius and Dylan Cousins, because then they can be your 1-2 instead. And then JT Miller can be another one for just like an outlook here on like just overall like draft wise, where you get a lot of stuff going on. So we'll see how it goes, but it is very interesting to see this whole thing with Elias Pettersson, I guess, more than anything. So realistically, I think that if this trade goes down, it's going to be the Bowen Byram version, just because I think that they need defense a little bit more than like offense, supposedly. And they also get an offensive and defensive player instead of 2 offense or 3 offense or however many you want. Also, trading Jack Quinn allows Dylan Cousins to stay on the wing and stay on the team, where I think he's actually been at least decent. And so I think sticking to that and letting him just stick on the wing versus moving him back and forth between center and wing the whole time and wondering why he's not progressing. That's like putting a defensive end and then linebacker, just back and forth. He's got to adjust to one or the other. And so now we can finally keep it constant and let him stay on the wing the whole time, so he can develop playing as a winger versus having to determine which he's going to play each night. And then the position that would be open is the Jack Quinn position. And Anton Wahlberg of the AHL fits perfectly within the next year or 2. If not him, then Noah Ostlund. So we would still have that filling in the hole. And then if we don't really want to go out and do that, that's completely fine. But that's just my mock trade.
All right. So my mock trade, it's a Dylan Cousins centered one. Because in my opinion, all right, if Byram wants $9 million, Cousins is already making $7 million. I think Byram is more than $2 million more valuable than Cousins. I think Byram is worth $8 million. I think Cousins is worth like $4 or $5 million. So because of that, I would rather have $9 million for Byram than $7 million for Cousins. So I have Dylan Cousins, Matthias Samuelson, because surprisingly, I've heard he still has trade value. He's still young, and he's not making too much money. The contract doesn't look good, but they need defensemen. So Dylan Cousins, Matthias Samuelson, our first round pick this year, top 4 protected. That if it is top 4, then next year's unprotected. The reason I want it to be top 4 protected is because in this year's class, there's 4 real stud prospects: Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa, Peter Martone, and James Hagan. I think if we miss out on one of those guys, it would really sting, even if we get a Pettersson. And then also Noah Ostlund. I think Helenis will end up being better than Ostlund, but I think Ostlund has better trade value right now because he's closer to being NHL ready, or has proven it more like AHL level or whatever you want to say. But so Dylan Cousins, Matthias Samuelson, top 4 protected first, and then, or try top 8 at first. If top 8 doesn't work, then top 4, and then Noah Ostlund. And then if you have to throw in a second or another prospect, totally fine with that. Because I actually I have Thompson staying at wing, but not in the first line. I guess dream lines would be first line Pettersson with Zucker and Tuck. And then second line, Kulich is that center. I think he is playing absolutely lights out. And then you keep Thompson and Peterka as that second line. They've been cooking lately. I think Kulich, however you want to say it, has been looking really good. Like in like the 4 games that this line's been together, they have a combined like 15 points or something crazy like that. I mean, you saw last night against the Bruins. That's the best the offense has looked probably all year. That first line especially. I mean, Thompson and Peterka both had hat tricks, 4-point games. So I think that that line is looking really good. And then the third line you have is Ryan McLeod, Zach Benson, and Jack Quinn. Maybe you can find a way to upgrade that other winger if Jack Quinn leaves / is just hasn't been that good this year. And then on the fourth line, Tyler Kozak, Jordan Greenway, Tyson Kozak, Jordan Greenway, and Beck Malenstein is that fourth line. I think if that's your 12, that's the most ideal. Also, I want to see if we can find a way to keep Byram, and if not, isn't Byram an RFA? Am I correct?
He is, and so
then we could try a sign and trade. We could always sign and trade. We could trade his rights away in the offseason. It's like, all right, doesn't look like we're going to trade him. It doesn't look like we're going to sign him.
It's not just that though. If he does sign with somebody, we would get draft compensation, and if it is $9 million, it would be 2 first-round picks.
Yes, so that's where
team that signs him.
Exactly. So that's where it's like, I don't really think he gets that much money.
It's hockey's version of like comp picks, basically.
Yeah. So personally, that's where I'm fine with keeping Byram. If we can get him at like a $7 or $8 million, because in my opinion, every defenseman that's not named Bowen Byram, Owen Power, and Rasmus Dahlin should not wear a Sabres jersey next year. They are all awful. They all suck. And I don't.
If I'm being honest, I wouldn't even hate Bowen Byram and Consta Hellenius in a first this year with a second next year in a situation for Elias Pettersson like a Carson Soucy. Carson Soucy's on a 3-year deal worth 2.3 AAV, and he's a right shot defenseman that plays on the second line of Vancouver's defense right now. He could legitimately stay in that second line role. He's been very solid this year for Vancouver. He's been one of the lone bright spots for them. He's a much needed right shot defenseman guy. So if you're basically trading him out for a Bowen Byram, that's completely fine with me because you're getting Elias freaking Pettersson back in this trade as well. And more so than anything, a lot of people have said to me, why does Bowen Byram intrigue the Vancouver Canucks? And that's because he's an RFA. It's because they have a lot more time to figure out what to do with him than they do with JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. So if they get rid of Elias Pettersson for Bowen Byram, they get the entire offseason, this offseason coming up, to deal with Bowen Byram and decide if they want to just let him walk and get 2 first-round picks for free, or if they want to trade him in a sign-and-trade kind of deal, versus Elias Pettersson wants out. And you can clearly tell that now because there's been so much pressure on Vancouver over the last few weeks to deal him. Yeah. And because of that, you really don't have the time with him, whereas you'll have so much more time and leverage with Bowen Byram than you do with Pettersson right now.
My thing, I guess, is especially if we trade for Elias Pettersson, we have much bigger needs on defense. Like our defenseman depth is god awful. We have yet to find Owen Power a competent playing partner because him and Byram just don't work together. Because they're both how much is his cap hit?
Carson Soucy's?
Yeah.
2.3 for 3 years.
Okay. I guess that works if we get him in return, but then we still
Well,
only have 3
technically, it's
defensemen.
a little more than 2.3 because
But
it's
then you
3.
probably
We signed
put
a 3 year, $7 million deal.
But then you
so
probably put
like
him. You probably
2.4.
put him with what, Dahlin, and then Power, or if you trade Byram and you get Soucy, then you put him with Power. Then who's Dahlin's line mate? Still doesn't really
Dahlin's
have a
line
line.
mate could be one of the other guys. Dahlin can really lift up the first line. So realistically,
I don't really like that personally.
well,
I
I'd rather
like the-
have that though, because
I think
unless we sign somebody in free agency right now or like trade for somebody else before the deadline, then realistically putting Carson Soucy there, you're going to ruin the second and third lines versus putting Soucy in the middle. You're messing with the first and third line. So you get that perfect balance, because if there's anybody on the D core right now that can stand alone, not needing a D partner, it would be Rasmus Dahlin. And so I'd rather have Dahlin with one of the guys who's a complete bum than have Owen Power by himself with a complete bum, because we've seen what Power does when he's with a bum.
And I get that. I totally get that. It's just if we trade Byram to get Pettersson, even if we get Soucy back, we still have so much more of a need at defense than we do as wingers or as our forwards. Our forwards become very good then. And
If
I
anything,
just think
at least
I would rather balance it out by keeping Byram and trading away Cousins plus, even if you have to give up more, Cousins, Samuelson plus instead of Byram and Quinn. I think that's probably actually about even value. I think Cousins and Samuelson is about even value to Byram and Quinn, if I'm being honest. So maybe it's a little bit less value, but I think either way, I would rather give up more on the forward side than the defense side, just because we have a lot of forwards and our top prospects are all forwards. We don't have many good defenseman prospects coming up. So I would rather us try and keep the good defensemen we have, and then I'd be willing to trade more forwards, just because, especially if we get Pettersson, our forward core becomes very, very good, and we just won't need these guys as much. But at the same time, I do understand trying Cousins out as a wing. He has shown, and like World Juniors and stuff like that, that he's very good on wing. So I get it. I'm just saying, my preferred choice is to trade forwards to get Pettersson than trade defensemen.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. But the thing is you're only trading Bowen Byram, who we're probably going to get rid of at the end of the season regardless, in my opinion. I just don't think that Kevin Adams is going to be willing to dish out $9 million to our third best defenseman on the roster, maybe second best. He's better than Power right now, but Power has higher
better than Power, and Power's also playing with Henry Jokiharju and Matthias Samuelson, while Byram gets to play with Dahlin, so it makes his job a lot easier.
So the thing is, though, with Byram,
we get those two first backs, and then we get those
not necessarily though, because we could also trade him for whatever.
Okay, either way, he still has a lot of value in trade talks, where then we can use those assets we get from that trade to go and get other defensemen.
Well, that's the thing, though.
Calgary, from maybe a Philadelphia, from a St. Louis, these teams that are kind of middling teams that need to just go full-blown tank. I think there would be value in the picks or / players we get for trading Byram or letting him walk in the offseason. We can flip those to get defensemen. I think better than we could from flipping Cousins to get defensemen. I think there's a better value in picks and players than a player signed for 7x7, especially for a tanking team. They're just going to want to try and offload players for picks and prospects instead of getting an established guy. So that's why I'm saying, but I get what you're saying at the same time. Byram's probably not back next year, so it makes sense to trade him to get Pettersson.
The thing that really just slips past me, I guess, well, not me, but it has before, is yes, Bowen Byram's a good player, and I'm glad to have him on the team right now. But here's the thing. Right now, you got to think about everything for the Sabres, literally everything, whether that's a forward, whether that's defenseman, whether that's anything on this team right now. And so even though we're getting rid of Bowen Byram, this would be for Elias Pettersson. And then on top of that, for this offseason, the main focus is going to be on the offensive centers and stuff like that. For the offseason for free agents, everybody's going to be talking about the Mikko Rantanens and the Mitchell Marners. They're not going to be talking about the defensemen for this upcoming free agency period. We can go and replace Bowen Byram without having to give up any assets. We can just sign somebody in free agency this offseason. It's not like Elias Pettersson right now is going to make us into the playoff team that we think we're going to be this year.
Oh, no, that's
I think
fair.
we're going to miss the playoffs regardless of if we get them or not. So here's the deal, though. If we do this, it's a matter of which one's better in my eyes. We're going to have way more competition trying to replace Dylan Cousins in free agency than we will with Bowen Byram, because there's going to be way more forwards. I
think we already have the answers in-house to replace Dylan Cousins than we do.
But that's the thing, though, is we can have the best of both worlds by trading Byram. We can go out and sign somebody to replace Bowen Byram in free agency and keep Dylan Cousins and keep a couple of the prospects, whether that be we trade Consta or whether we trade Noah or whether we trade Anton Wahlberg, maybe whether you trade whoever. And
if we get Pettersson, we just don't have as much need for those prospects, though.
Right. But the thing is, though, is while we may not have that much need right now, we can still have that. Like, we'll still have guys as they get older. Like right now, we have a lot of guys that are getting up there in age. Alex,
I've also personally, I'm sorry for interjecting. I'm also just trying to find a way to get off Dylan Cousins' contract. If we can get off Dylan Cousins' contract and Matthias Sam, those are probably our two worst contracts on the team. Matthias Samuelsson and Dylan Cousins are probably two worst contracts on the team. So if we can get off those contracts and bring in someone like Elias Pettersson, that's also a point I need to bring up, is being able to get off those contracts, because you also have to remember the salary cap. We're paying Dahlin, we're paying Power, we're paying Thompson. If we bring in Pettersson, we'll be paying Pettersson. That's four guys right there. Tuck's making some money. We're gonna extend. We just signed UPL. We're going to, I'm assuming, bring back Peterka, because I don't really want to let him walk. Those are a lot of guys we're paying decent money to. I don't really want to have another $7 million defenseman and a $3 to $4 million defenseman lying around, when I'd rather flip those to go and get that $11 million forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And so my big thing here is just to break it down here. If we do trade Bowen Byram, then we can keep Dylan Cousins, because I think if we trade anybody at that point, it would be Jack Quinn with him or a prospect, right? So let's say we trade a prospect or even two prospects. We can still keep the other two prospects, because there's four big prospects that we have still on the forward core. So we can at least keep two of the four by only getting rid of our defensemen. So if we get rid of Bowen Byram, then when we get to the offseason, we'll now have Elias Pettersson, who has 7 more years on his deal after this season, because he signed an 8-year contract with $11.6 million per season. So that would be his second season with us. And then we go out, sign somebody to take over Bowen Byram's spot from anywhere between $2 to $6 million we'd have for that, because realistically, I'd be okay with signing somebody for $6 million to play line 2. And then we could probably put a budget around $10 million for the defenseman. We can go out and sign one more defenseman for the bottom pair up to like $3 to $4 million, and we could sign somebody for the second pair $6 to $7 million, and that's $10 million overall for those two guys. And then now our defense is complete. We have the complete offense, and we keep at least a couple of the prospects. And it's just so much better of an outcome, because then all we're really getting rid of is the draft picks. And then why would we need draft picks if the team's already good? We have some prospects still in the system that we wouldn't need draft picks for a couple seasons, because those prospects are just going to fill in the spots when other people leave. Like if Peterka walks, knock on wood, if Peterka walks, we can sign somebody else or bring up one of our guys.
Here, all right. So one thing real quick. With having Dylan Cousins and Samuelsson's contract on the books and letting Byram walk, and say we get Pettersson. Between Pettersson, Cousins, Tuck, I'm saying we give Peterka like $5 million. So Peterka, UPL.
I'd say 6.
So wait, I put it at 5 though. This is just a rough estimate. So with Cousins, Thompson, Peterka, Pettersson, Dahlin, Power, and UPL, between just those 7 guys, it's $60 million. Then we want to bring back McLeod, want to bring back Zucker. We want to keep that fourth line intact. We want to add other defensemen, and that's not adding the other guys we have under contract still, like Connor Clifton and among others. By the time we basically bring everyone back, we're right on the line, and that's with Kulik's going to need a contract extension soon. Other defensemen we bring in, I don't know how much we can afford these guys. There's just like there's contract. I just feel like we're much tighter on the salary cap if we trade Byram and keep Samuelson and Cousins than if we trade Cousins and Samuelson and then we let Byram play the season out, let him walk in free agency and get arguably probably those 2 first-round picks that we can then use to go and find more cost-effective players, or we trade Byram to go and get cost-effective players. I just feel like we have more financial freedom if we trade Cousins and Samuelson versus if we trade Quinn and Byram.
Oh,
And
no, yeah, totally. And
that's where it's like I kind of want more financial freedom, because then maybe we can afford, if we want to go out and get a Mikko Rantanen and probably not Rantanen, but maybe a Mitch Marner. I would not be upset at all to bring in a Mitch Marner. He's having the best season of his career.
I wouldn't even be surprised
he's a Bills fan.
If we go out and do
Buffalo.
2 trades. I wouldn't even be surprised if we do 2 trades here, where we go out and do Elias Pettersson for my trade with Byram, and then flip Matthias Samuelson for something of a decent defenseman. I would not care if we traded Matthias Samuelson in a 2nd-round pick this year for Carson Soucy. I really would not care, because Carson
or we
Soucy's
can add that into the trade,
and you get all that cap space.
We can add that into the trade for Pettersson, maybe make it a big. I mean, yeah, there's definitely different avenues to go to.
That could happen.
At the end of the day, we both agree on one thing. We want Elias Pettersson to be wearing a Sabres jersey next season.
Yes,
and
hopefully.
We have the assets. In the years past, it was like, all right, when after we traded Eichel, it's like, all right, we're not ready in position now to go and make that big trade for like the Matthew Tkachuk when he wanted out, stuff like that. But it's like, what, after we won in 2022, it's like, all right, the next big name guy that wants out, that wants to be traded with all the assets, we should go get him. Mikko Rantanen was kind of surprise one. We didn't land him. Whatever. He's a UFA after this year. Elias Pettersson is already extended fully. He's that big name guy that wants out. This is the guy that the Sabres have been needing since we traded away Jack Quinn or Jack.
And this is so much better of a fit because Mikko's wanting around 14, 15 million a season. Why go out and get him when you can get $4 million cheaper Elias Pettersson? Probably
who's
less.
a center versus a winger.
Yeah.
And we have more issues at center than we do winger because Cousins seems more of a winger. Kulich has looked really good at center, but it's only his first year in the NHL. Thompson is a center, but like also be fine with him at winger. Also, I love Thompson. I think he's a top 50 player in this league. I don't really know if I want him as my 1C, though, if I'm a championship contender, because he's not good at defense and stuff like that. So I'd rather have someone more well-rounded where he can fit in as that second line, just absolute sniper as either the winger or the center, wherever we want to play him. Personally, I like keeping him at wing right now with Kulich as the center. I think they play really well. But there's multiple ways you can go around it. But I think that's all we have for today. Nice hour and a half episode. Next week, we should be going into a lot of MLB offseason news that we've missed over the last month and a half. We'll talk about the NBA with the All-Stars. The starters have been dropped. The reserves are dropping soon. We can talk about some surprises, some disappointments so far through the season as we are getting past the midway point in there. Maybe we'll talk more Bills over news that's happened over the last week. We'll talk about the upcoming Super Bowl matchup. We'll talk about Sabres a lot. So stay tuned. As the Sabres do, their next game is Friday. Tomorrow they travel, or they host Nashville at home at 7 o'clock. I hope you guys all have a great day. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. Peace.